Ok, muy buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Ricardo Jiménez, seré el moderador de la sesión de la tarde de hoy. Siempre antes de comenzar, le damos los parámetros a los diferentes estudiantes aquí y posteriores los que van a grabación, de que en todas las sesiones siempre son grabadas para que las puedan ver en plataforma virtual si así lo desean. También se les solicita que mantengan los micrófonos apagados en el momento que deseen hacer alguna consulta o aportar a la clase, siempre con el permiso del docente, ¿no? Le pedimos que mantenga las cámaras activas en todo momento, siempre para que puedan estar en las sesiones. Se le pide de que si no pueden tener las cámaras activas, siempre manden su excusa mediante el chat general de Zoom o personal. De lo contrario, en las sesiones serán siendo restados puntos de la heterovaloración del docente y serán sacados de la sesión como tal. Mi rol siempre como moderador es facilitar y apoyar en la parte técnica de estas sesiones. Cualquier consulta la pueden hacer por el chat general o personal de Zoom. Y siempre se les exhorta a tener bolígrafo y papel para hacer anotaciones y aprovechar al máximo las sesiones. Informar que la sesión tiene un tiempo de 60 minutos, que vendrá siendo una hora. Sin más nada que agregar por mi parte, pues entonces le doy la palabra a la profe Elizabeth.
Muy buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Castillo. Welcome to Principles of Education Evaluation. Let's get started with class. Let's start talking about what we're going to see during this class, during this first class. First, we're going to start with a prayer. After that, we're going to have a section of self-introductions where we're going to get to know each other. Then we're going to continue with talking about the objectives for this class. After that, we're going to have a section for talking about our previous experience about evaluation according to our experience. Then we're going to talk about what evaluation is. We're going to have a discussion about this topic. After that, we're going to talk about the types of evaluation, assessment and evaluation. We're going to see the differences between these two terms, these two concepts. Then we're going to have a round of examples. And finally, we're going to talk about our next assignments on the platform. Let's get started. I would like to start making a prayer. So thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you for all the opportunities that you give me. Thank you for all the things that you provide us. Thank you for this class. Help us to get our objectives and to thank you for our daily bread. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Well, first of all, we're going to start with self-introduction. Well, it would be awesome if you were here, but due to the situation, I'm going to introduce myself. Well, as I mentioned before, my name is Elizabeth Castillo. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you in this subject. I'm originally from Panama City. I studied in the University of Panama. I studied English, I studied education, and I studied all my specializations in the University of Panama. I have around 18 years of experience teaching English as English institutes in elementary school, in junior high, in high school, and in the university. So I love what I do. In my free time, I like to go out with my friends to restaurants, going to the different cultural activities. And I hope we have a good time during this course. And we can have great contributions to our country through your practice and your learning process. Well, let's talk about the objectives that we're going to have in this class. First, recognize the difference between assessment and evaluation. And second, identify the purpose, functions, and types of evaluation. Well, let's talk about our experience about evaluation. Well, due to the situation right now, I am going to share my experience about evaluation according to my previous experience. I come from the official, and well, I studied throughout my life in official schools in different schools, but all of them were officials. So I have plenty of experience. Well, according to these assignments, I would like you, due to you're not here, I would like you to make a list of 6 things that you remember that you did at school in order to evaluate, or sorry, that your teachers did in order to evaluate. So let's take our time to remember what kind of activities we used to do in our school life in order to being evaluated in the knowledge or the content that we were taught at school. And we're going to make a list here. So I'm going to give you some examples. Well, according to my experience being as a student, not as a teacher, as a student, I remember that my teachers, since I remember, used to assign different activities to evaluate knowledge, to evaluate skills. Let's make a list. So I remember that I used to have concept maps. I remember we used to have, sometimes we used to have projects. Also, sometimes we had debate. We used to have different kinds of dialogues. We used to have tests to evaluate knowledge or exams, depending on the point of view of the teacher. We used to have 2 or 3 tests and 1 or 2 exams in the term or in the trimester or bimester. Also, we used to have some right here, we used to have some kind of research project. Research project or research paper. Sometimes teachers or professors used to assign reading analysis. Sometimes we used to have we used to have topics to give our opinions. So it was like class discussion. So all of these activities were done according to the content, according to the material that we were studying, according to the subject, according to the teacher. And all of them tried to find out what the student knew or what my classmates and I used to manage, or what they wanted to know what we were clear about, what we were not clear about, so they could improve during the following classes and clarify our ideas about those topics. So as you can see, maybe all of you have gone through this kind of activities in our experience, or we have gone through this kind of activities or ways of being evaluated, and we know what they involved. Well, now let's continue with the following topic, that is a little bit more about definition, and let's see examples about evaluation. According to the definition that we have here, educational evaluation looks at the entire learning process from different points of view. Because when we evaluate, as you saw before, I made a short list. Maybe there are many more activities that we could do, but in that way, we can evaluate our students in different ways, from different points of view. Also, the process of evaluation is not only coming from the teacher. Of course, teachers are trained, or we as teacher and you as future teachers are in the position of evaluation all the time. But it is super important that students also learn how to evaluate themselves and how to help each other on their evaluation. So evaluation can be quantitative and qualitative. It means that quantitative is when we are talking about numbers, when we give numbers to the evaluation. And qualitative is when we are talking about aspects that are not given a number because they are not academically graded with a number, but we evaluate them in ways of achieve, or in the process of being achieved, or not done, depending on the kind of rubric or the kind of evaluation that we are doing, or the way the topic that we're evaluating and the way we are evaluating. Quantitative evaluations, as I mentioned, is one of the most common, and qualitative as well. So there is not like one is better than the other one. The point is that they are used according to what we want to evaluate. Well, now let's have a little discussion on this based on these questions. according to your experience, ask yourself. You can include it in your list, in the previous list that you made. Here, remember that you need to file this paper that you are using to do this classwork, because this is going to be part of the evidence that you watched this class and you did your classwork. If you don't write, or you write and you throw away this paper, you will have no evaluation on classwork. It's super important that you file these documents, and during the term, you are going to be asked to upload these documents or these evidence of your classwork. So the first is the list that we just made of activities that we usually do in our classrooms when we are students. And now the following activity that you're going to do after this is answer these questions. Write down the questions that you see here and answer these questions. The first question is, when does evaluation occur? Let's analyze. When do you evaluate? What moment? How does evaluation occur? We're talking about the way. How does evaluation occur? How often does it occur? So let's think about, for example, in a trimester, how often do you have to evaluate your students? Number 4, what do you have to use in order to do it? Or what do you have to pay attention when you have to evaluate your students? And finally, why do we have to evaluate our students? What is the reason? Well, let's get started. You can stop the video in this moment, develop the answers, and after listen to what I'm going to say according to my experience. Well, I am going to give my own opinion about these questions, because this maybe, if you are not clear, you can have some ideas on your own and write them down. You cannot write down exactly what I am going to say. You need to use your own ideas. But anyway, stop. That's why I'm telling you to stop the recording and solve these questions. But after, if you want to include something else, you can continue listening to what I'm going to say about each of these questions and expand them or include them in your answers. But not only my answers should be written. Okay, according to the first question, when does evaluation occur? Well, evaluation occurs in different moments. Sorry. Evaluation occurs, first of all, when we need to know how our students are, or how much information our students have about the content that we are going to teach. So before we start teaching anything, we need to know what they know. So that's why evaluation begins at the beginning, because it helps us to know where we are in the process of learning and where previously we need to know where we're going. When we talk about the objectives with the topics that we have in the class, we know where we're going. But in order to know where we are, we need to start making a diagnostic test or a diagnostic evaluation. We need to we need to ask questions. We need to check how much our students know about it. So the process of teaching doesn't become boring for them. When does evaluation occur? Well, it occurs inside the classroom. Well, before outside the classroom when we plan our evaluations. In the classroom when we are testing or we are evaluating our students. And in the whole school, when the institution where we're teaching evaluates our students. So as you can see, it happens everywhere and happens in different moments. So also we can say that evaluation happens before we start teaching, during the process that we're teaching, and at the end of the process of teaching any topic. Number 2, how does evaluation occur? Well, evaluation, as I mentioned before, can have 2 ways. In a qualitative way or quantitative way or in a qualitative way. It means that sometimes we may need a number to know if we are doing well or if the students are doing well. And also we need to know, sometimes we need to observe and we need to evaluate behaviors. That's when we need to establish standards to evaluate the students' behavior with other methods, not quantitative. It would be qualitative. Number 3, how often does it occur? Well, as I mentioned before, it depends on the teacher. It depends on the topic. However, there are 3 points that we need to keep all the time in our classes. Before the topic starts in our classroom, it means when we prepare the diagnostic tests about the topic, or when we prepare the questions to know how much our students know. During the process with the formative tests and with the summative tests at the end of the process or at the end of the time that we have to cover a specific topic. So how often does it happen? So depending on the amounts of topics that we have, it will happen very often, or it will happen every now and then, depending on the time that we have for the school, depending if we are working with bimesters or trimesters or in terms or quadrimesters, depending on that, we should know how many assignments, how many evaluations we need to make in order to know if the topic is well developed and the students are getting to know about it, and if the students got to manage the topic, etc. Number 4, what do you have to use in order to do it? Well, there are different kinds of methods, techniques to evaluate. For example, in order to evaluate knowledge, we can have basically, depending on the topic, we can have some specific topics to develop with a speech. We can have a rubric, or through a test, we can have different items, different parts to evaluate the knowledge. If we have paper, we can evaluate the students' point of view based on the information that research. So when we evaluate content, or when we evaluate speeches or presentations, we should have rubrics. It's the best option, so we can cover all the aspects that the students should know about the topic. We can have also, besides the rubric, we can have, if it is qualitative evaluation, the rubric can have numbers or can have different levels of achievements according to what we are evaluating. If we are evaluating a process, maybe the person knows how to do a process, maybe a recipe, maybe an experiment. We could use different instruments to evaluate. Why do we have to evaluate our students? Well, it's super important to know that our students are learning or are achieving the goals that we have for them. So in order to know, or in order to have specific information about what they are learning, what they are not learning, we need to evaluate. So evaluation is the only way that we have in order to know if we are on the way to achieve our objectives, or we are far from them, or we have already gotten our goals. So that's what I can contribute about these questions that we have here. Now, let's continue talking about the types of evaluation and their importance in the process. There are different types of evaluation in education, but these are the fundamental evaluations that we have to have, is a must in our process of evaluating. First, when, for instance, if we are teaching English, if you go to an institution where you're going to learn a language, maybe English, Chinese, Italian, I don't know, any language, the most important thing that you should do before you start your course is knowing how much information you have about the topic, the language. So a placement test or a placement evaluation will be super important in the process of learning any skill, or to learn any language, because it will place you in the correct level. Inside our process of teaching any topic, we need to have a diagnostic evaluation, as I mentioned before, formative evaluation, and summative evaluation, because this is part of the curriculum for our teaching methods. Now, what is assessment and what is evaluation? When we hear assessment and evaluation, sometimes we confuse them, but it's important to be clear about the difference. First, we can say that assessment is the systematic process of documenting and using empirical data to measure knowledge, skills, attitudes, values, and beliefs. It is through assessment that the teacher tries to advance the student's learning process. The main question that we need to make ourselves in when we are talking about assessment is, what does this student need so he or she can be successful? So when we're talking about assessment, we are really focused on the student's necessities. And now, what is evaluation? Evaluation focuses on numerical information. Here, we're talking about grades. And evaluation doesn't guarantee that learning has occurred, because it might inadvertently measure skills such as memorization instead of critical thinking. We all know that, for instance, in the area of English, many, not to say all, of us have gone through topics where we have memorized, where we have studied by heart the information in order to get a grade to pass the subject. And with that, we have survived just because of a number. But after a week, or maybe after 1 day or 2 days, we go back and try to remember that information, and probably we will not remember, or we will remember a little bit, but not a lot. We will not be clear because we studied by memorizing. So evaluation doesn't determine that the student is capable of using the information to solve a problem, because sometimes the information was just memorized, and the student maybe has an excellent way of studying through memorization, or has excellent memory. So we cannot rely, or we cannot trust that a number or a grade is exactly what the student knows. So an evaluation can be used as a final review to gauge the quality of instruction. The main question an evaluation has to answer is, what has been learned? If we learned through this concept, or through this aspect of the learning process, things would have been better. So let's say that assessment focuses on the student's skills, attitudes, values. A whole thing is very complete, the way it assesses the student, not only on a grade. An evaluation focuses on giving the student a specific grade. So if we think about the process of learning English situation in the country, why has it been so bad for many of us? Well, because we were taught through evaluation about a language that had to be taught as a language, not as a subject. And it was taught as a subject in our whole life. And it was evaluated in that way. It was never assessed as a skill that was super necessary to be practiced, to be dynamic, that had to be clearly understood, and had to be very interactive. So now let's make a list of 2 examples of assessment and 2 examples of evaluation. You're going to have 5 minutes. Well, in your house, or in your place, wherever you are, take your time to write down 2 examples. Remember, try to remember in your experience, your previous experience, where or in what moment, or through what ways of evaluation you were assessed or evaluated in your school life. Well, I am going to give you also this reminder included in the paper where you have been doing the previous classwork, because it's going to be part of your class number 1's evaluation. Well, based on what we have here, what we could remember on our school life, we have different kinds of I think we could remember different kinds of activities where we were assessed on the knowledge, or activities where we were evaluated. In my own experience, I can say that most of the time when we interact with classmates, our teachers are observing different things. If the student follows the instructions, so this is a way to assess the student's behavior. If the student follows the instructions, knows how to deal with others, if the students knows how to manage his or her time to deliver the assignments on time. So students, through observation, so through the teacher's observation, get evaluated or get assessed. It means that when we were students, we were observed. That's one way of assessment, observation. Another important part of assessment, or another way of assessment, is when, I think you remember, when we were students in a class, we used to do some projects where we used to have some readings. After we read the story, sometimes we had to fulfill a questionnaire about the reading. And many times at the end of the questionnaire, our teachers asked us about our opinion. Through that opinion, we were assessed on our values. We were assessed on our reading comprehension. We were assessed on our way or speed on reading, and we were assessed in different ways. So reading is also a very popular and very common activity done in class in order to assess students. So through our reading, we can get to know the student's point of view. We can get to know him or her. We can maybe know about his or her family, because maybe he or she tells us about anecdotes or experience similar to the stories. And that information also helps us to have a better relationship with our students. And through the other details that we have in a reading, like if the student has the capacity of reading and understanding fast, slow, or average, has an average reading understanding, all of these things could be assessed through this kind of activities done in class with a reading. Let's go to two examples of evaluation. Well, when we evaluate also, we have specific things. We have more academic and specific things in content. For example, if we are teaching, imagine that you are teaching public speaking, and then you tell the students how to stand up in front of the class. You tell the students how to use their gestures, how to dress, how to project to the audience, how to have eye contact. You have taught the students how to eliminate pet words or the crutches, how to develop fluency through the answers of some questions that you practice with them, etc. After teaching public speaking, you would be able to evaluate if the student knows how to apply that knowledge. So evaluation would be when you tell them, okay, in this speech or in this, through the delivery of this topic, I am going to evaluate your posture, your eye contact. I'm going to evaluate your tone of voice. I'm going to evaluate your pronunciation. I'm going to develop your fluency about the topic and how to answer questions. I'm going to evaluate grammar. I'm going to evaluate everything. All the topics, all the aspects that you are going to, that you taught before, that you provided examples, all those aspects will be evaluated. So you will give a number. So maybe all these aspects represent 5 points. So you will evaluate out of the 5 points, how many points the students gets according to his performance or her performance. So that would be an evaluation. Another example that we could have in our classrooms is, for instance, when we assign a map concept, a concept map. In this case, there is a topic that they have to read about, and they have to be able to summarize or to simplify in a concept map, where they have to be able to go to specific and the most important topics that they are going to read. This is one assignment that we have to explain what we want to achieve at the end. So they need to be able to summarize. They need to be able to mention the most important topics, the subpoints. They need to be able to create it in a specific piece of paper, maybe in a position where everything looks clearly. Maybe they need to be creative to present the chart with different boxes or circles. So you need to specify how you're going to evaluate that concept map. Creativity, how many points? Mention the most important topics, how many points? Include the subpoints, how many points? It has to be clean, it has to be neat. It has to be on time. Sometimes we evaluate that, punctuality. And all the aspects that you're going to evaluate needs to be explained to the student. We cannot assign, we should never assign anything that has to be evaluated without giving the students the aspects that we're going to take into consideration. We should never do that. We should be very objective. We should have very clear objective of what we want to get from the students. So we should never think about assigning things just because you need to collect a number or you need to collect a grade from this topic, and that's it. That mentality should be changed from now on. We should never, ever do that. Why? Because we are not giving the students the emphasis on what is the most important. The most important is their knowledge, their capacity. We need to develop their capacity to evaluate themselves. We need to be able to teach them that the most important is to learn, not to get a grade, because the grade doesn't necessarily mean that the student is competent about that content or that topic. Because sometimes that's why our society, or that's why many people in our country and in many other countries have diplomas, have certifications, and they're not competent, because this weakness through many years has been internalized, and we are studying to get a grade. We are teaching to collect grades, and this is not the most important. The most important is that we evaluate learning, we evaluate competence, we evaluate analysis, capacity to analyze things. We need to create citizens that are able to distinguish between doing good things or doing contributing to the problems that we already have. So how are they going to know that when we teach them in the classroom that they have to do things on their benefits, but also thinking about others? We are not just, we don't have to be selfish in terms of learning something to push other people and shine, or out being in a position just because of money, because this is like a cycle. This is something that we do daily, and it is so repetitively that contributes not only to the bad situation that we have in our country, but the future generations of these people behaving in this way, doing things for receiving something back. We need to learn to be generous. We need to learn to be honest, and we need to do that in order to show those students how to do it, and that it is possible. We don't need to change the whole world. We need to change ourselves. If we change ourselves, then we're changing the world step by step. So changing the mentality in the process of education with our own example will represent also changing our students, will represent changing co-workers, will represent changing our society. So education is a combination of planning, assess the process, make the changes that are possible, retake the topics, and evaluate how we're doing. We need to be, of course, we need to fight with time. I know, I'm clear about it, but we need to be intentional, because if we are intentional about it, we could do it. So if we are intentional about changing our mentality, we would change our students and we would change the whole process. Well, then with these examples of assessment, you need to develop your own examples of assessment and evaluation, and you can take into consideration the ones that I gave you today. We finish with the activities that we have already planned for this module number 1. Well, let's wrap up what we saw today. Well, we saw different things. First of all, we started talking about, let's go back. We started talking about our experience, our kinds of activities that we do to evaluate, and the things that we have done through our life to be evaluated. We talked about the definition of evaluation. We talked about the different part of moments that we evaluate or we have been evaluated, how we have been evaluated, how often we have been evaluated, and in the process of studying, why, or in the process of teaching, why we have to evaluate. We have seen the types of evaluation. We have seen the differences between assessment and evaluation. And with this, we have covered all the topics that we should see in this module. Now, let's talk about the assignment that you have to fulfill, or remember that this module takes 1 week. It's important that you are clear about that, because you are going to, or you need to invest 12 hours of your time through this week to do the activities that you have to do on the platform. You need, remember, you need to watch the 2 videos. You need to have a reading, number 1. The reading number 1 has an activity at the end. You need to read the description about this reading assignment. Here you need to teach a class, or you need to prepare a class about the past perfect progressive tense, and you need to prepare. Imagine that you already taught this topic. This is what you have to, where you have to place yourself. Imagine that you already explained the past perfect progressive tense. Okay. Imagine that you did all the process, the diagnostic, the formative, and now you need to prepare a summative evaluation. So this test or this exam needs to have 30 points. So this test must consist of the 3 parts with different activities. So maybe each part 10 points. I recommend you to have 1 point. Every item should worth 1 point. However, if you have a section where your students are supposed to develop writing skills, where they have to explain their opinions, or where they have to maybe talk about an anecdote using this tense, then you can give 2, 5, or more points. So if you have 1 item of 1, maybe fill out the blanks, 1 point. If you have 1 item of matching, 1 point. So every point, if you have match, you need to prepare 10 items. If you are fill out the blanks, you have to prepare 10 fill out the blank spaces, items. Fill out the blank space items, 10. So that's what I mean. In the end, 30, the amount of points per part must be clearly, you need to specify in the instructions. And you do not have to include any true or false. This is not supposed to be part of the way. Another, on the second reading, you need to prepare a 1-minute video explaining the main differences between assessment and evaluation. It will represent 80 points of your evaluation. The most important is that you recognize it. So if with today's class you were not clear, I invite you to watch the videos that you have on the platform or get more extra information so you're totally clear. This video must show from the shoulders up. So like this one, like this recording, you must be dressed professionally. So no tank tops or this kind of outfits that are very informal. You remember you're a teacher. You need to begin the video by stating your name. You need to look straight into the camera. You cannot be reading because remember, you need to change your mentality. You are not supposed to be read because you are supposed to understand the concepts. If you don't understand the concepts, then how are you going to teach? You need to be ready. You need to prepare yourself. So try to understand the concepts, try to watch videos, look for information, and then you're going to be ready. And you need to speak slow and clearly because this is not a competence. This is you're not competing with other students. You are talking to the camera as if you were talking to me or to me and your classmates in a classroom. So try to speak slow. Maybe if you have problems of connections, speaking slow and clearly helps you to continue through the recording of your video. So you need to pay attention to the rubrics that you have over there after the second reading. And pay attention to all the aspects that you're going to be evaluated with this video. Besides this, you need to watch the video and read the instructions to do your assignments. Also, you need to check the forum because I'm going to give you a question, some questions over there. So you need to answer or give your opinion about these questions. Well, thank you very much for attending today. It's been a pleasure for me to be here with you, and I'll see you next Saturday.
Okay, muchas gracias, profesora. Entonces, con esto concluiríamos la sesión de la tarde de hoy. Siempre deseando una feliz tarde y una feliz noche a todos y nos veremos en una próxima sesión. Hasta luego.